Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're taking a hammer to a centuries-old historical misconception, and we're going to uncover the dazzling reality of an ancient African metropolis. We're looking closely at ancient Ife. This was a civilization whose art and technological prowess completely rewrote the rules of what anyone thought was possible in the medieval world.
Okay, let's jump straight into the mystery here. When 19th century Westerners first laid eyes on the magnificent sculptures of Ife, they were absolutely floored. I mean, the sheer Greco-Roman style perfection, the flawless symmetry, the startling realism, it shocked them so profoundly that they arrogantly assumed ancient Africans couldn't have actually made them. They literally started making up mythical origins for the artists, completely ignoring the undeniable local heritage right in front of them. But, the reality is so much more fascinating than the myths. Ile-Ife wasn't some mystical transplant from another continent. It was a powerful, highly advanced kingdom nestled deep in the forest region of West Africa, thriving right between the 12th and 15th centuries. And for the Yoruba people, it's way more than just a historical site. Ile-Ife is the sacred mythological genesis of all humanity. To them, it's the very center where the world was created.
And this brings us to our first major breakthrough. For the longest time, the standard Eurocentric view of art history basically argued that art evolves in a straight line, right? From primitive, abstract forms to sophisticated naturalism. Well, ancient Ife completely shatters that idea. In the Ife context, their hyper-realistic, naturalistic art wasn't just some random step on an evolutionary ladder. It was a highly specific, totally deliberate political and religious technology, and they used it concurrently alongside stylized art to express divine royal power.
Part 1. Center of the world, the metropolis of Ife. Let's see how they built the immense foundation of this city, because as you can imagine, to produce unparalleled art, you kind of need an unparalleled society.
Now, what is truly staggering here is the sheer scale of the place. At its peak in the 14th century, Ife was one of Africa's largest cities, boasting a population of up to 100,000 people. Just imagine walking through a bustling metropolis, enclosed by outer walls stretching over 15 kilometers. And the streets weren't just dirt paths, either. They were completely smooth, paved with these incredibly intricate patterns of broken pottery and quartz, ingeniously set in residual palm oil so they'd last for centuries. Beyond the physical infrastructure, it was a massive intellectual powerhouse. It was the absolute capital of the Ife divination and philosophical school, pulling in scholars and pilgrims from all over.
And the crazy part is, we are still putting the pieces together today. Modern archaeological teams, like the researchers from the Ife Sungbo Archaeological Project, are out there constantly unearthing new evidence that challenges everything we thought we knew about urbanization in forest Africa. Section 2. An empire built on glass, the Olokan Grove. So, a metropolis of that size obviously requires serious capital. How exactly did they fund all this massive urbanization and this massive cultural explosion?
Well, here is the crucial point. They didn't import this stuff. Ife independently invented a unique, fiercely guarded glass-making process from scratch. By sourcing completely local pegmatic rock, limestone, and get this, snail shells, they created a very specific high-lime, high-alumina, or HLA, glass. They would form it into long tubes, carefully apply controlled heating, and use local iron and cobalt to activate these stunning blue and red pigments. They literally turned local dirt and shells into incredibly valuable luxury beads. And the scale of this operation, absolutely massive. 268. That is the size in hectares of the Olokan Grove. This was the only primary glass manufacturing site in all of West Africa during Ife's classical era, and it acted as the kingdom's absolute economic engine. The elites guarded this secret closely, which allowed them to monopolize trade across vast networks, reaching all the way to empires like Mali.
Section 3. The art of naturalism. Divine proportions. This immense wealth directly patronized a sculptural tradition that frankly remains globally unparalleled to this day. It gave their artisans the time, the resources, and the immense prestige to create masterful works of copper, brass, and terracotta.
But to really understand why these sculptures look the way they do, we have to understand their worldview. There is a Yoruba proverb. It is death that turns an individual into a beautiful sculpture. A living person has blemishes. This hits the nail right on the head. It perfectly explains why these artists didn't just carve exactly what they saw with all the flaws included. Instead, they painstakingly sculpted unblemished, idealized versions of their leaders to immortalize them as perfect divine ancestors.
As we break down the anatomy of these royal sculptures, you can really see this philosophy in action. The figures are always shown in their prime, usually around their 30s or 40s, with perfect facial symmetry and these distinct horizontal beauty lines carved right into the neck. But pay attention to that last detail, the enlarged head representing a 1:4 head-to-body ratio. In Yoruba metaphysics, a nation's wealth and destiny are directly tied to the head of its ruler. So it's not some kind of mistake in proportion. It is a profound philosophical statement rendered in metal and clay. And the scientific brilliance behind this is staggering. The artists used a highly complex lost wax casting process. They sculpted in wax, encased it in clay, melted the wax out, and poured in molten metal. They often actually took wax prints of the deceased ruler's face shortly after death. But they didn't stop there. They meticulously hand-sculpted away the sagging skin and the decay of the death mask, evening out the features to create an immortal, plump-faced deity. I mean, it was part forensic science and part supreme artistry. Section 4. Sculpting Power and Ritual. Tools of Leadership. Let's be totally clear here. These pure copper and terracotta masterpieces weren't just pretty objects made to sit in a gallery somewhere. They were incredibly active political tools used to manage a highly complex society. The art actually served to unify opposing political factions within the city. Ile-Ife had historically experienced some severe internal conflicts, specifically between the old order, which was associated with the deity Obatala, and the new order, linked to Oduduwa. The incredibly diverse facial markings we see on the sculptures actually represented this political cosmopolitanism. It was a visual tracking of the unification of these completely different ideological groups into one cohesive, towering pantheon. Now, to make sure we're being perfectly historically accurate based on our sources, we really must impartially clear up a very common linguistic mix-up here. The Yoruba word for forest or grove is wugbo or igbo. Historically, this refers to internal Yoruba subgroups linked to that old Obatala order we just mentioned. This is completely separate linguistically and historically from the southeastern Igbo ethnic group of Nigeria, who at that time had completely different decentralized social structures. Distinguishing these two terms is absolutely vital for understanding Ife's true internal political landscape without getting confused. Beyond the human forms, the artists frequently integrated these incredible zoomorphic, or animal, metaphors into the sculptures. You'll see snake-winged birds, chameleons, and mudfish intricately placed on crowns and medallions. By adding these powerful animal symbols, the kings visually cemented their status as divine mediators who controlled the forces of nature and the spiritual realm itself. Part 5. Collapse and Enduring Legacy. The sacred center. But like so many classical empires throughout history, this magnificent golden age eventually faced a sudden and truly devastating end. It was basically a perfect storm of catastrophes. In the late 14th century, the region was hit by a severe drought, right alongside a devastating smallpox epidemic. Then, incredibly, evidence points to the arrival and recurrent outbreaks of the bubonic plague. By the 15th century, the sheer demographic collapse led to the almost complete dispersal of the urban population. The great artisan lineages completely lost their patrons, and the production of these naturalist masterpieces just stopped abruptly. Yet, the story doesn't truly end there. While Ile-Ife lost its massive commercial and political dominance to the rising Oyo and Benin kingdoms, it forever retained its status as the sacred ritual center of the Yoruba world. Even though the city's political grip faded, its ritual supremacy was so absolute, so universally respected, that later empires still literally required the spiritual blessing of Ife just to legitimize their own kings. Which leaves us with one final provocative thought to take away from this explainer today. If the artists of ancient Ife mastered sublime, breathtaking naturalism purely through independent ritual design, centuries before European contact, how much of our supposed universal art history timeline is actually just a myth? It completely changes how we view human innovation. Thanks for joining me today, and keep questioning what you think you know.